I'm sure you're familiar with marathons, even if you're not the kind who would run in one. Marathons have become a very popular thing. We see them held across the country in major cities like Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, places like that. Many other places become very common events in a way that a lot of people want to push themselves and to try to improve their health and to demonstrate their ability to persevere through that kind of endeavor. A marathon is reckoned at about 26 miles and 385 yards, or in metric, 42 kilometers and 195 meters. As of today, the fastest marathon occurred in 2023 at 2 hours and 35 seconds. Now, the marathon is not a new idea. It is actually a memorial to a legendary event in the history of ancient Greece. And if we take some time to consider that experience and what went on that led to the marathons that we know today, we can probably gain some spiritual insight into some things regarding our faith. And therefore, we do well to take and learn some lessons from marathon. To understand, we have to go back to 490 BC. There is Greece, as we understand it today, and the Persian Empire. It's the same Persian Empire that we read about in Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and books like that. And they had spread west into what we call Turkey today, into Western Asia Minor, where they ended up encountering where the Greeks had built colonies along the Ionian coast, there on the western end of modern-day Turkey. And the Greeks had instigated and helped encourage a revolt of those areas from Persian control 20 years earlier. And the Persians didn't forget about that. And so, Darius I of Persia, in order to get rid of that kind of threat and also to expand his territory, sent an army to Greece to conquer Athens around 490 BC. And the Persians and the forces from Athens would meet on the plain of Marathon at 490 BC. Now, the Athenians were heavily outnumbered by the Persians, but they had the better fighting style for the battle. The Persians favored a bow and arrow and just fight from a distance, but the Greeks were using the hoplite system, heavily armed men in interlocked clusters, where they were all kind of in this big mass together. Now, the plain of Marathon was tucked between the mountains and the sea. There wasn't a lot of room to negotiate. And when Miltiades, one of the Athenian men, was the ruler of the day, that was the day he gave the order to attack. The battle was very hard fought, but the Athenians were able to obtain an overwhelming victory and sent the Persians to their ships. Now, there was a significant concern that Miltiades had, that now they had just won this victory, but the Persians could then now sail around Marathon to the Piraeus, the port of Athens, and threaten Athens. And the Athenians might have despaired. They probably weren't expecting to be victorious, so they were thinking, the Persians are here, we've lost the battle, all is lost. They may surrender, they may capitulate, they may do something that would mean that the Battle of Marathon would have been fought in vain. And so Miltiades calls upon a runner, and he calls upon Phidippides. Now, runners are very important in ancient Greece. Greece is an incredibly mountainous territory. And in order to get from any 2 points by land, runners are going to be the most quick and efficient way of doing that. It's going to be hard on horses, and maybe you can make it by donkey, but donkeys take a lot longer. We have to realize, for instance, Phidippides had just run down to Sparta and back, which is a journey that by road, there was no major road between the two places until the 20th century. After World War II, they finally built a road that you could really take from those two places. That's why the Greeks were masters of sailing, that they would sail from their different cities. That was the easiest way of going. So Phidippides is a runner. He may have even fought in the battle. And now he is tasked with running back to Athens to tell them of the victory before the Persians can get there. So Phidippides goes and runs. And he runs that 26 miles and a little bit more from Marathon to Athens. And he gets into town and he cries out the message, Nike, which means victory. And then he promptly dies of exhaustion. Not just from having run the marathon. For a runner, that would, do 26 miles was not significant. But that's coming right after he had just run down to Sparta back, much longer distance, and whatever activities he had during the fighting of that particular day. And so we can understand why he would have had that experience. Now, what happened to him? Well, the Athenians heard his message, didn't really know what to make of it. And anyway, Miltiades and the Athenian army made it back to Athens before the Persians showed up at Piraeus. And the Persians did show up at Piraeus. They did sail around. But when they saw that the Athenian army had made it back already, they recognized there was no way they were going to be successful in any endeavor, and so they shipped back to their camps and eventually returned to Asia Minor or Turkey. And that bought all of Greece 10 years until Xerxes would come back with a much larger army, and yet even there the Greeks would end up being successful against them at Salamis and Plataea, and the heart of classical Greece would remain free from the oppression of the Persian Empire. So what can we gain out of the story of the Marathon and the Battle of Marathon? Well, the first thing that we can get is an understanding of, look, that they're at war, right? We think about marathons and we don't think about a war context, in which that makes sense, right? They're kind of a race, the way to celebrate things, but this was a war, and there was a lot at stake. All those Persian soldiers were there, and they had come for the purpose of fighting, right? And they were there for the glory of the king and to expand his dominion. The boys from Athens, they're fighting for their homeland, they're fighting for their way of life, they're fighting for their freedom. And they end up being much more successful than could have been imagined because of the way that they had massed themselves together. And there's a lot that we can gain from that. In Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 17, Paul will encourage Christians to stand firm against all the assaults of our opponents, and that our opponents are not flesh and blood, but they're the cosmic forces of darkness over this present darkness, right? We have all these different forces that are against us, and therefore we need to stand in the strength of God. And he talked to all this armor, right? The helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the sword of the Spirit, shield of faith, things of that nature that a Christian should be arrayed with in order to stand firm and to resist all of the assaults of the evil one. And so we have this militaristic imagery. And always need to be careful about it, of course, because people will take it, get rid of the imagery concept of it, and think they need to go kill people for Jesus. And of course, that is completely contrary to the point. In fact, to go kill people for Jesus is doing the work of the evil one, because that is not the way God would have it. It is a spiritual conflict with these spiritual forces. But we should note how so much of that armor is defensive, right? And Paul is using the example of a Roman soldier that's going to be part of a maniple. But the Roman army and its maniples are simply adaptations and modifications of the Greek hoplite system. It was a revolution in warfare what the Greeks put together. There was a reason why they won in that context. And they won because they were all well armed and they were interlocked, right? The whole idea of the hoplite of the maniple is that everyone's shield's kind of protecting the next guy as well as one's own, and that you are going as a mass, as a group. And I think that even though Paul does not bring that out explicitly, since that is such an important part of the Roman maniple system, as it was for the Greek hoplite system, it is certainly there in the minds of everybody reading this at the time, and is an important part for us to keep in mind. So many times we look at ourselves in terms of any kind of conflict like this, and we're thinking about our own individual excellence, our own individual behavior on the battlefield, whereas in this kind of context, it's very much about how well you stick together. The hoplite system is a complete hot mess if they don't stay together. It only works when they stay together, and this is a great reminder as Christians that we need to stay together. That part of our strength in being able to stand firm against the evil one is the fact that we're not just defending ourselves, we're also defending the guy next to us, and he's also defending us. And that's how we're going to be able to endure all of these various attacks that we go through in life. And not only, of course, is it a war, but it's also not fair, right? The enemy is deceptive. It would not have been fair for the Persians to go around and act like they had won when they had been beaten. But that's the nature of warfare. Deception is there all the time. And that's also true about our enemy, that he is deceptive. In fact, that there's the deceitfulness of sin that we need to be warned about in Hebrews 3:13, that we're not hardened against. We should look at how Satan, after having tempted Jesus in Luke chapter 4, and Jesus had overcome, he went away to wait for another opportune time to test him. It's not like he just gave up, right? He's looking for that moment of weakness, a moment where you can turn. And what happened at Marathon is a good parallel for us, because there are some times where we may gain the victory and stand firm against some of the attacks of the evil one. But what ends up happening is we get complacent or content because of that victory. Pride wells up, and now we are allowing ourselves to be attacked in a different way, and may fall prey with that attack. And so we need to be very careful about ourselves and to realize, again, the whole theme of a marathon, the whole theme of this whole concept, which we're seeing, that there needs to be endurance, right? Think about being Philippides, right? You're tired. It's been a long day of battle. You ran from Sparta and back not long ago. You don't know what's going to happen, but you know that the Persians are this threat. And so everything you might have just accomplished and all your fellow soldiers accomplished might have been in vain if you don't make it. And so that's the reason why he's tasked with this message to go. And he has to run for 26 miles. He has the physical condition to do it, although he does get exhausted and dies, right? So it's not a matter of inability through physical conditioning. The physical conditioning can be there. And of course, if you shouldn't just get up one day and start trying to run a marathon. You probably aren't ready yet. You can build yourself up and be physically conditioned for that kind of run. But anyone who's done any kind of long-term exercise like that will tell you it's not merely about physical conditioning, right? It's also very much about your mental and emotional state and maintaining mental and emotional stamina to persevere when your body's sending signals you can't do it anymore, just to keep pushing on, right? And we can look at this in so many different ways. Philippians had a very important message to deliver. We have an important message to deliver, the gospel. Need to deliver it to people. And thankfully, we don't have to run 26 miles in order to do so. In Matthew 10, verse 22, Jesus says that it is he who endures to the end who is going to be saved. Paul and the Hebrews author will both use the same illustration of a run. Probably not a marathon per se, but the idea of a race in 1 Corinthians 9 and Hebrews 12. When Paul's talking about how he disciplines himself, his body, so that he is not running aimlessly, right? That he runs so as to win the prize. The Hebrews author imagines all being surrounded by the great cloud of witnesses who are cheering us on, and that we are to run the race set before us, getting rid of all the encumbrances of sin, and to look on Jesus, look to Jesus as we're running this race, since he has run the race before us. So that running of a race. And of course, when we think of the ultimate race, we think of the marathon, right? Marathon has become shorthand, in English at least, for something that's a very long-term, long-enduring thing. We have sometimes a TV marathon if something's going on, shown for hours upon hours. We talk about various kind of work marathons if we have to do something for a long period of time, right? And so the Christian faith is very much its own kind of marathon. And you run marathons differently than you run sprints, right? A 100-meter dash, you're just trying to run as fast as you can. You're just using all the energy quickly. You can't do that on a marathon because you got a long way to go, so you have to pace yourself. You've got to maintain that internal strength. There'll be times where you're going to go faster. Sometimes you're going to go slower. Sometimes you're going up. Sometimes you're going down. You got all the ups and downs. That's the way it is with the Christian life. There are going to be times where you will be able to feel strong, and times you'll feel weak. Sometimes you'll need more encouragement. Sometimes you can provide more of the encouragement. But the goal is to keep running, right? The goal is to keep going, to persevere, and to endure. And that's all the things that Jesus is constantly reinforcing for us in his message, in his life, and through the apostles, that we need to endure. We need to persevere. But then, of course, there's the deal, the ultimate irony of what happened with Philippides. His message wasn't that successful, right? The message really wasn't fully understood until Miltiades returned. And ultimately, was the run even necessary? Not really, because the army returned before the Persians did, right? But here we are, almost 2,500 years later, still remembering the marathon of Philippides. And there are thousands of people these days who run a marathon in his honor, whether they recognize that's what they're doing or not. And it's a testament to what the human body can endure. But there's a really important lesson to this, and we can see it in 1 Corinthians 15, where after we talk to the resurrection, he wants to encourage the Christians to remain strong and steadfast, to realize that to always abide in the Lord, because their work in the Lord will not be in vain. We may not always be successful at our endeavors. We may not make, our words may not be well heard by people. Our example may not mean much to people. We may try to do various endeavors to glorify God, and they may seem like they're not that successful. But we do not know how they will maintain as a legacy. Maybe it will actually mean something significant in the future. Maybe somebody will eventually come and turn years after. Maybe no one ever does in that sense. But like Philippides in the marathon, maybe the memory of it will become a legacy and a benefit for those in the future. We have no idea what we have accomplished for God in Christ may mean in the resurrection when we share on that glorious day. And that's why it's important for us to learn a lot from marathon, right? Not just from the run, but from the battle and all that involved with it. That we are at war, our enemy is deceptive, we can be motivated and endure, and that even if it seems like what we do is not doing much at all, it may maintain a very important and powerful eternal legacy for the purposes of God in Christ. And therefore, let us endure and persevere and run that marathon of life, to maintain that marathon of faith, and to obtain the victor's crown at the end, and to celebrate life and the resurrection with God in Christ through the Spirit forever. So glad you've joined us. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts about marathon and making spiritual parallels, love to know about it. Let us know in the comments. Continue our conversation. I'm Ethan with the Venice Church of Christ. We'd love to be of encouragement to you. Would you like for us to pray for you? Would you like to study the Bible with us or take a Bible correspondence course? Would you like to meet with us? There's something more we can do for you. Please let us know. Please reach out to us at VeniceChurchOfChrist.org. You can also find us online on various forms of social media at Venice Church or Venice Church of Christ. We again thank you. May the Lord bless and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, and to be able to meet again.